Hello everyone. I am Doğan Yeke, a PhD student at Purdue University.
I am Mohammed Ibrahim, PhD student at Purdue University.
And I'm Gülis Saray Tuncay from Google.
Today, we would like to talk about our work, Where is my data? Understanding the cross-device runtime permission model in Wearables. This work has been done with my collaborators from Purdue University, Google, and University of Irvine.
Thank you, Dol, for the introduction. On mobile platforms, we have permissions that regulate access to sensitive user data and resources. In the case of Android, before Android 6, we had an install time permission model where permissions were granted to apps at installation. Starting with Android 6 and on later Android versions, we have the runtime permission model, which requires app developers to request user consent at runtime before accessing highly sensitive data such as location camera, contacts, and so on. In the recent years, wearables have gained a lot of popularity as they enable us to do many things, such as fitness tracking, activity monitoring, and payments more easily. Apps running on these devices deal with very sensitive user data that might even be more sensitive than those on smartphones, in fact. So wearable platforms also adopt permission models to protect these sensitive data. In this talk, our main focus will be on Wear OS, which is a popular wearable platform developed by Google. To protect sensitive data and resources, Wear OS uses a permission model, which is derived from Android's permission model. Specifically, there are two ways to request a permission in Wear OS. The first one is an app running on the watch, which we will call a watch app, can directly request a permission, or a permission request can be triggered by a phone app running on the smartphone that is paired with the smartwatch. When we pair a smartphone and a watch, we end up having two devices that have their own permission models simultaneously governing user data. If we look at the note here from Android developer guides, it says a Wear app can't assume the permissions granted in a phone app. If a user grants a phone app the permission to use location, the user must grant the Wear app the same permission. So this note indicates that the two permission models here should be considered exclusive. The watch or the phone app cannot assume that they can obtain data from the other, and they have to request the permission on their own separately. However, there are communication channels between the devices that allow for the transfer of sensitive data from one device to the other. So in this example here, the phone app obtains access to location, which it can then send to the watch. And similarly, if the watch app, say, requests access to the user's vital signs and physical activities, once it obtains this permission, it can send the data to the phone. So basically, once a permission is granted on one device, the data is actually accessible on both devices. This can come as a surprise to a user who assumed that their data will be contained within a device and did not realize that it could freely flow between the devices. So if they expected only the app running on the device where the permission is granted to have access, then their privacy is violated in this case. So besides the cross-device data flows, an adversarial app an adversarial app developer can take advantage of the redirection prompts to maliciously obtain permissions. So a redirection prompt is a dialog whose content is controlled by the app developer and it's shown before a permission is requested on the other device. So in this specific example here, what we see in the redirection prompt is information regarding storage access. And what is actually being requested on the other end on the smartphone is camera. So as you can see, there's clearly a mismatch here. So what is the adversary trying to achieve here and how is this useful? Our user research shows that some people think a redirection prompt is a permission prompt and they don't pay attention to the actual permission dialog later shown on the device. And using redirection prompts, an adversary can trick users into granting permissions that they normally might not be so willing to grant. For example, we know that users are more likely to grant storage over camera, as in the example shown here. So the adversary can utilize this knowledge to obtain camera access. Alternatively, the adversary can mention in the redirection prompt the need for a permission that was previously granted by the user, counting on the knowledge that prior user research shows that users will be highly likely to re-grant the permission. So utilizing these tricks, the adversary can get the user to inadvertently grant the permission, and the user, as they have not read the second prompt, will be unaware of what's going on.
Thank you, Dr. Gule. So the first question we answer in our work is, do apps in the wild actually have this cross-device setup flows? For that, we develop our tool called Flow Finder that statically analyzes APKs and discovers cross-device data flows. We run our tool on a dataset of 150 apps. This dataset includes both the watch app and the phone app. We run our tool separately on each of the APK, and as the output, we get sensitive cross-device data flows. Our tool first converts each APK into Gimbal IR and performs certain instrumentation so we can perform taint analysis on it onwards. Our instrumentation involves handling Kotlin callbacks, complex data flows by adding taint wrappers, and adding explicit functions for data sources which do not have explicit functions. We analyze the instrumented Gimbal IR using FlowDrive and perform taint analysis on it. For taint analysis, we need a list of sources and a list of sinks. We gather the list of sources from previous works and by analyzing Android open source project. For sinks, we systematically analyze the Wear OS data layer and identify functions that are involved in communication between devices. After performing taint analysis, we get a list of data flows, which we further verify by confirming that the target app has the corresponding permissions that are involved in the sensitive data flow. After running our analysis, we find that out of 150 apps from our dataset, 28 apps have cross-device data flows. The results are shown in this table. As you can see, most of the flows are from phone to the watch because most of the apps in our dataset are watch-based apps. And these watch-based apps do not have the capability of asking permissions on the watch. So what they do is they ask the permission on the phone, get the data from there, and send it to the watch. And as you can see, the sensor data is from watch to the phone because the phone lacks certain sensors that are present on the watch, and the apps get this data from the watch and send it to the phone so it can be displayed to the user. The next question we ask is, do apps inform the users about these cross-device data flows? For that, we manually check all of the apps. We check their user interfaces to see if the app informs them while the user is interacting with them. We find that none of the app informs the user from within the app. Then we check the store descriptions, and we found that only 2 apps mention some sort of data transfer. And then we check the privacy policies, and we find that only 1 app explicitly states the type and the purpose of data being transferred.
Thanks, Ibrahim. Next, we analyze whether the platform informs the users about cross-device data flows. For this, we inspected Wearables 2 and Wearables 3. In Wearables 2, during device pairing, we have seen a location notice. It says, to prevent your watch from using any location information, turn off location in your watch setting. This will keep your watch from using location data from phone and watch. However, even we toggle off this location setting, the watch can still access the phone's location through cross-device data flows. In Wearables 3, however, there is no such claim that the watch can use location from phone anymore. Now we just analyze the privacy implications of the dual permission model. Finally, we examine the user's mental models on permissions in Wearables. To answer this question, we conduct the user study focusing on 2 research questions. RQ1, do users perceive permissions to work in the existence of cross-device data flows? And RQ2, can adversary misguide users into unknowingly granting access to sensitive data? We conducted semi-structured interviews with 63 Android and/or Wearables users. participate in a 3 scenario study where they interacted with the smartwatch and smartphone. We present the full details of our study in the paper. However, for the purpose of this presentation, I will be going over two. The first scenario is to analyze the user's understanding of cross-device data flows. In this scenario, the user first interacts with the phone and grants the location permission on phone. And next, the user opens the watch app and denies the location permission. At the end of this scenario, we ask the user which app can access the phone's location when you grant the permission on phone but deny it on the watch. Our results show that 31% of the participants said both apps can access to phone's location. However, 66% of the participants said only the phone app can access phone's location. In fact, both apps have access to a phone's location because of the cross-device data flows between the watch app and the phone app. Next, we analyze the feasibility of cross-device permission phishing. To analyze this, we divided participants into two groups, control group and the experimental group. In control group G1, the participant sees a redirection prompt which says app needs access to photos, media, and files. And next, the user sees the permission and grants. In the experimental group, they see app needs your camera access, they see the permission, and they grant. And at the end of this scenario, we ask, do you think the phone app can access files, photos, and videos? When we look at the results, we see an increase in number of people who said app cannot access storage. Specifically, the percentage increases from 0% to 17%. Also, some participants believe that app could access storage data because it requested camera permission. Therefore, we anticipate that the number of people may increase if two semantically separate permissions are used in this phishing attempt. Next, although our work focuses on Android Wear OS permission model, we conducted additional preliminary analysis on other ecosystems such as iOS and watchOS. In this ecosystem, apps can request the permission on either device through permission dialogues. Depending on which app the user first interacts with, the user's decision is automatically applied to the companion device, which we call this process as permission synchronization. For instance, if the user grants the permission on phone, their decision is automatically applied to the watch app. This synchronization is automatically done at app runtime without any notification. In terms of revoking the permissions, the user can only revoke this permission on the phone. As you see, it is disabled on the watch, but the user can enable this on the phone.
Thank you, Do. In terms of countermeasures, there are several approaches that can be taken to address the issues that we identified in this work. The first one is having additional information prompts to inform the users about the possibility of cross-device sensitive data flows. The downside of this solution is that it might not be very effective if users don't read the prompts or they don't read the prompts carefully, or if the prompts are too long or not worded well. Again, the solution might not be very effective. So we need additional user studies to decide on the best possible UI and the text here. The second one is having a user-centric permission model where the permission decisions will get synchronized between the devices. This is similar to what iOS does, and it aligns better with the reality, but users still need to be informed and give consent if we're implementing this. This is critical because, as we've shown, the majority, about 67% of the users in our study, thought that the data is accessible only on the device where they granted the permission. So doing this by default might not be a great idea, as it might also violate user expectations and privacy. The third one is a solution at the app market level, where we can utilize a taint analysis-based approach, such as in the tool that we built, Flow Finder, to identify apps that have cross-device data flows. The downside of this approach is that it might miss side-loaded apps if they don't exist on official app markets. So a combination of these solutions can be utilized to address the issues from several angles. There are also some recent developments in Wear OS regarding the handling of permissions. Android and Wear are actively working on a platform-level solution. And the key idea in this solution is to move from a device-centric permission model to a user-centric permission model and educate the users about this so we do not have the misconceptions found in the study anymore. In this approach, permissions will be synchronized between the devices. The synchronization will be unidirectional from the phone to the watch, and it is expected to work for all Wear OS devices, but currently the feature is not active.
Thank you, Dr. Gillis. To conclude, via taint analysis, we showed cross-device sensitive data flows in real-world apps. We assessed users' mental models on permissions on variables via user study. Next, we conducted preliminary analysis on other platforms. And last, we proposed potential countermeasures. We would like to thank Wear OS team and Android security and privacy teams for their valuable suggestions and feedback. So thank you so much. Thank you for listening.